So welcome to Soil Health to Go with Darlene Goehringer from Pop's Old Place. We are very excited. As I said earlier, this is a little bit of the work of the Million Acre Challenge captured here, including our soil health benchmark study and networking opportunities like these lunch and learns and our advanced farmer networks. And that all of that work is designed to put producers in community with one another. And we really see farmers as the experts in soil health. And we recognize that they, including Darlene and many others, are already working to steward the land. And we want to help create opportunities for that. The QR codes that you see on your screen here are going to take you to more information about several different financial resources available in connection with the Million Acre Challenge. In green is the Million Acre Challenge RCPP. In brown is the PASA Climate Smart Farming and Marketing Program. In orange is the American Farmland Trust Climate Smart Beef Project, another USDA Climate Smart Commodities project. And in blue is the AFT Climate Smart project for row crop producers. So scanning any of these will take you to more information about those opportunities. And just a couple of quick announcements. We would love to engage with you beyond this event. Social media is a fun way to stay in touch. You can find us on most social media platforms as Soil Challenge. And you can also find more resources on our website. Their QR code is here in teal. And we have lunch and learns like this one every second Wednesday. And we post the recordings on our YouTube channel. And we do have monthly newsletters, which offer a pretty amazing roundup of local and regional events, financial opportunities, and soil health news. So there's our website. It's millionacrechallenge.org. And here you can see our names, our email addresses. My name's Amanda Cather, my farmland.org web email address, and my colleague Lisa Garfield, who's here from Future Harvest, with her Future Harvest email address. Because the Million Acre Challenge is a collaborative, we don't have any Million Acre Challenge specific addresses, but just our organization specific ones. And now I'm very pleased to welcome Darlene Goehringer. She and her husband, Arthur Wilson, own and operate Pop's Old Place, a century farm, which has been in the same family for more than 100 years, just outside Hurlock, Maryland, where they raise beef, pork, lamb, and laying hens. Darlene, unlike many of us, grew up in a family farm, a diversified family farm just a mile away from her current home, where her parents raised produce, small grains, pastured pigs, and cows. She says they were essentially rotationally grazing back then, but for different reasons. The current farm that she lives on belonged to her grandparents, and so that's where they got the name. So Darlene, thank you so much for being with us today. And let's get started with a brief history of Pop's Old Place. If you want to just tell us how you started the farm in that.
Sure. It's been just about 25 years ago. My husband and I were ready to set down a homestead, and we purchased 10 acres from my parents. It was actually in the back of the farm that we currently live on. And at the time, we were really just avid equestrians. And we set up some pasture for horses, and we had a couple pet goats. And at some point, I want to say it was 2007, my husband was diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and he's doing extremely well. And I just was told by the doctors that we couldn't do much as far as it was a wait and see kind of a diagnosis. And I'm not one to really want to sit around and do nothing. So I thought the one thing I could do was start raising our own food. So with our 10 acres, we started with lamb and some pastured poultry. And I played around with raising goats and meat rabbits and all kinds of things. When my parents passed away, we inherited the front of the farm, and that's really when I decided that I was going to jump in full tilt with larger livestock. So it really jumped off when I bought the first sheep. I learned about NRCS funding, and that's really gave me a head start on fencing and watering systems and things like that.
Mhm. Now you made the decision to only sell from the farm, not to attend any farmers markets, not to do wholesale. Will you tell us a little bit about how that impacts your business model
Sure.
and why you chose that?
Yeah, when I started, I was still working in a corporate job that kept me away from home about 55 hours a week. I was on the road a lot driving. I had a sales position. And I just knew on Saturdays and Sundays, I didn't want to pack up a car and leave the farm. And I had visited some other farms in the process of, considering what I wanted to do. If we were going to raise, 2 cows for us a year, 2 pigs for us a year, and a half a dozen sheep, I thought as well go ahead and raise more and try to sell it. So at least if we broke even, we were eating for free and the farm was being utilized. Um, and visiting the other farms, I really like the concept of having the patrons come to the farm and see, I guess, the transparency. I am who I say I am, and you're welcome to come and take a look. Um, I really enjoy the fact that if I'm busy, I can, stay out there in the farm market with my customers. If I'm not busy, I can get jobs done until someone comes up the driveway. So it just seemed like the most efficient use of my time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you also do a monthly pop-up market on the farm with that kind of helps other folks sell their products. How does that work?
So it's by invitation only because I really want people who've kind of fit my model of I like producer only. I really like the patron to meet the person who either raised the food or created the product. And they were just people that I met socially that, were doing things. And I thought, you know what, why not take advantage of the people who were coming already? They want to see it. Creates a real fun environment that one day a month it gives them the social, the ability to be social with other people that are like-minded.
Mhm.
And we have one coming up this Saturday, and it's sometimes it's well attended, sometimes it's not. Summer's not my best season. Um, but I really like helping promote other, producers.
That's very generous of you as a producer. So you raise heritage breeds on the farm. Can you give us the explanation for how you decided on the breeds that you raise?
I, with us being very small, which we are compared to a lot of farms, it was important to me that we had a niche market. I really liked the ability of if I had heritage livestock, I always had in the back pocket, if I didn't sell the meat, I could sell the animals for breeding stock. Um, but they were a good fit for the farm. I wanted everything that was well adapted to living outside on pasture. The mulefoot pigs, they're a dark-hided hog and they just do really well in pastured environment. They don't get sunburned. I'm really a fat forward diet, so the mulefoot fits really well for me with the fatty meats. The Katahdin sheep, I've raised them now for probably the 17 years almost. And I'm actually in the process of maybe transitioning away. We'll see how that works. I've got some things in my pocket on that. And then the Randall cattle, the main thing for me on that was, they were grass-fed genetics. There's only about 2,000 of them currently, in the United States. They're a smaller breed animal, so they do well on pasture. My cows have never had grain. I don't have the
Oh,
desire to schlep 50-pound bags of feed any more than I have to. The older I get, the heavier they get.
yep.
Um, I love the look of the breed, but more than anything, they came in #1 on multiple taste tests for flavor on grass. So that was a real push up acquiring them because there's so few. And now I think there's only one other breeder of Randalls in the Maryland area.
Wow. So you spent 33 years in corporate marketing and 7 in the hospitality industry. How do you think that background affects your operation?
So when I worked for Cisco Foods, which a lot of people find it hard to believe that I worked for Cisco Foods when I'm so, eat from the farm. Um, but I, had my own restaurant for 7 years. And when I sold that, I wasn't in a position to farm financially. And they offered me a really nice, job, which I was very happy to get. And with that, I worked as a restaurant consultant. They paid me to go out and work with restaurateurs and teach them how to figure out what their break even was, you know, their food costs, their labor costs. And in the process of that, they really afforded me the ability to learn a lot about marketing to help the restaurants. And when I decided I wanted to be self-employed again, I carried that knowledge over. So I'm a big believer, if you offer cheap, you attract cheap. So, it's not let's make a deal. I work really hard here on the farm, and I think I charge a fair price for what we're offering. If I can't get what I need to at least make my expenses, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to go in the hole just to be the romantic farmer. So I think that many years, I saw a lot of people in the restaurant industry who really just wanted their own business so much that they were willing to get right in bed with the devil and, give things away in order to have their business. And I think my experience in Cisco was just invaluable, honestly.
So I heard that you do a cost analysis on the farm at once a year. And how does that inform the way you move forward or make decisions?
So usually once a year, I really sit down and work with, now that I'm home full time, I'm the one that's taking care of most of the feeding, but I really keep a daily cost per animal. Um, and then every time I bring a carcass back from the processor, every single piece of that meat, organ meat, bone, everything that I think I can sell, I put into a spreadsheet at my retail value and I subtract all my cost. And then I try to be fair to the consumer, but I also know that I have a certain number that I want to meet. And I nothing goes into the retail case until it's been weighed and calculated. And that's every single time.
Wow. 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 That's an impressive commitment to knowing your costs and knowing your profit margins. And
Yeah, well, I have a limited savings now, not working on farm, and I don't want it to erode away and then wish I hadn't.
mm-hmm,
So, I think it's the smart thing to do. And, we're all preaching about sustainable agriculture, but the number one key to sustainability is profitability.
absolutely.
So, especially with someone without, I didn't inherit money and it needs to make money.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that. I think that really is an important framing of the way that soil health kind of plays into your profitability and into the way you think about your business. So let's talk about soil health for a little while. How do you think about healthy soil contributing to the profitability of your farm and the health of your animals?
Well, for me, soil health wasn't my first thought, honestly, when I started this. It was, air health, and then I worked backwards. So for us to have the most, in my opinion, healthy product for my family to consume, the animals had to be healthy. And in order for the animals to be healthy, they had to have really good forage. In order to grow really good forage, you had to have really good soil. So I started at the back end and worked towards the soil. And through the years, I still have that same mindset, but seeing the land heal, and it is healing. The picture that you're looking at with the cows and the dog, I mean, at one point that land almost behaved like it had a ground sterilant on it. It
Wow.
just would not produce. And I still have a couple pastures that are very poor, but all that does is give me the incentive to be even more creative and try harder. Um, so I'm all things soil at this point.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about your rotational grazing. You said you recently went to moving your animals once a day. So how does that work? How's it going? Why did you decide to make that change?
Well, even before I started really farming, I knew about rotational grazing. And when Natural Resources Conservation Service helped me set up my paddocks, they had someone who laid it all out for me, and they set me up in 3 to 5 acre paddocks, which I thought was rotational grazing, and it is. But listening online to different people, I really came to realize you need to bunch them up. Um, I just couldn't conceptually wrap my head around with how was I going to move my cows every day? Was it going to be time consuming? Were they going to behave? Would they stay where I needed them to? And they didn't in the beginning, but it didn't take long for them to learn and respect the electric wire. Um, at this point, honestly, I would be very comfortable moving them twice a day, and I'm considering doing that. The whole process of setting up the fencing and moving the cows once I'm out there is probably about 15 to 20 minutes.
Wow.
Um, and the idea of having a long recovery, it just works really well, and they're just like us. You put the cows out there on the pasture or the sheep out on the pasture, and it's a buffet for them. So obviously they go for dessert first and don't want to eat their vegetables. So when you bunch them up, they're not as selectively grazing, and it is working. I wish I'd done it sooner. I attended a grass-fed exchange conference, and before I went, I knew if they asked us, I wasn't going to be able to raise my hand that I was doing it. So I was like, I'm starting today. So that was really the catalyst for me to jump in and do it.
That's amazing. Good for you. It looks like you have a really simple system here with the pigtails and the spools and the poly wire. You just use one wire per
I do
cow?
use one wire. Yep. And, it's uh, the second wire. I think I would get a lot of shorting out of the electric fence, with the forage. So I run my UTV through the tall grass and I make a path and then I lay that line out.
Mhm.
And I'm using all solar chargers, and it's strong enough that
Wow.
it's deterring them from want to go through it. As long as I don't leave them in a spot without good forage, they don't really test the line. If I miscalculate, and they're talking, I need to move them.
Mm-hmm. And there's your example of your solar charger.
So,
Wow, that's a
so
nice
the
big one.
picture on the left is actually a solar panel that runs a well system. So
Oh,
my watering facility for the animals is completely off grid. So if we were
wow.
to lose water or lose electric here, I always have water. In that red building, there's a tower that has a cistern in it. We decided to cover it up just because in the winter we were getting enough wind from the northwest that it was wanting to freeze that line. And it keeps it from freezing. But the water, pumps up into the cistern. It's 1,000 gallon tank, and then it gravity feeds out to my drinking facilities.
Wow.
Um, I will mention the one thing that I really struggled with rotational grazing was trying to figure out how to move water every day. So now what I do is I don't use a back fence, and at the
Mm,
5 day mark, I provide the cows or the sheep with different water in another, so they don't go back and nip off the tender grass that's coming up.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so far it's working.
That's great. That water, that water issue is a big one. It's
It is big. And I tell you, I really, like I said, conceptually, if you haven't done it, it can be a real
yes.
mental block.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You also have a special new tool on the farm.
I do.
Will you tell
So
us about her?
Rose is my Australian Shepherd. I bought her. She has herding genetics. She's really fantastic. Um, she will stand at the gate and keep them from coming out while I drive in. the one thing that's really amazing, when I drop that fence to open up to the other perimeter, none of the cows can cross that line until I give her it's okay to let them go.
Wow.
And that wasn't an easy thing. I mean, we struggled. You know, she chased them through the fence quite a few times in the beginning because she's a young dog. And now, I mean, her and she takes the place of two other people,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
doesn't criticize me.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
she's been a game changer for me working by myself on the farm during the day.
Yeah. That's amazing. I always think of my dogs as some of my most important coworkers. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So what's next? What are you looking forward to? How are you what's coming up for you in your soil health journey and your farm journey?
So now that I've kind of figured out a watering solution for the sheep in the front pastures, I'm really thinking that's going to help me manage parasites. Also add another animal grazing. Hopefully they will, you know, obviously everything wants to graze selectively if they can. So the sheep add another component to that. Um, I'm looking at getting some different genetics with the sheep. I'm actually going tomorrow to look at that. And if I can get my carcass weight up on my lambs, I'm probably going to increase the size of my flock. Um, Sheep per acre are much more profitable than
Hmm,
cows per acre.
hmm.
Um, I do enjoy working with the cows more than I enjoy working with the sheep because cows really are a set it and forget it. As far as I don't really worry about parasites as long as I keep them moving. I don't have to trim their feet. Um, to put my hands on the cows is probably twice a year, and sheep in the summer is about every 2 weeks. I'm running them through the chute and checking for just anemia and things like that. Um, Pigs, I probably will maintain the same. In my farm market, I'm not going to change a lot. You know, I've started teaching some baking classes, which really is the easiest thing I do for income because it's not physically taxing.
Hmm.
So that's one of my big mulefoot pigs. They're just fabulous, very docile. I don't know if anybody's raised pigs before, but pigs can be not docile, and the mulefoot is fabulous.
So
Um,
sweet.
and then my husband, he works full time off farm, but he also has a farming background. He worked on a dairy as a young man, and his parents and grandparents were farmers. And anybody who's ever heard me talk about farming, I'm kind of the face of the farm, but without Arthur, it doesn't work. I mean, he's a mechanic, a plumber, an electrician, and he's obviously a lot stronger than I am when I need that. So, and he's my biggest cheerleader. I mean, if I tell him I want to do something, he's very encouraging.
Just more
As
pictures of your beautiful sheep.
I know they're so pretty. They really are.
Here you are, 25 years and
25
counting.
years ago. So the first thing I did was well, we started with the house and I planted about 300 trees around the farm.
Wow.
Um, I'm a big proponent of shade. We talked about it earlier. That's actually my biggest dilemma in the summer. I have a lot of people who follow me on social media. If we which we don't get much snow anymore, but if we get a snowstorm, everybody will reach out and say, how is everybody, all the animals doing? Well, the animals do fine in the snow. It's really weeks like next week when it's 91 degrees and the humidity's unbearable that I'm really concerned. So trees, 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 and that's probably something I'm actually going to continue to add.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm seeing we're almost at 12:30, and I want to let folks know that if they want to stay on for Q&A afterwards, you graciously agreed to stay on with us until about 12:45 for
Sure,
questions. That's awesome. But I do want, as we wrap up, just to let folks know that if they want to learn more from you, then this very short time can offer. You do offer farm tours at 9 a.m. the first Sunday of every month, and folks
Correct.
can sign up for your farm email. So they can learn that way, and you can do that right from your website, which is popsoldplace.com.
Correct.
So just want to let folks know that in case they have to jump off, and to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. But we'll say goodbye to folks who need to leave. I'm going to stop sharing, and we will see if there's any questions for you from folks who are here. And if not, I certainly have a lot.
Hi, Darlene. Thank you so much for your presentation. I love all your photos and just your love of your animals and hearing about your dog. It's really wonderful. I'm cooking lunch, but I do have a question for you. I'm wondering, you talked a little bit about challenges with parasites in sheep, and I haven't worked directly with sheep in a while. Just curious if there's any strategies that have worked well for you in that process. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. So one of the biggest things that I did to try and offset the parasite load for sheep was I incorporated summer annuals, and I do a grazing millet and some other annuals in that. I try to always have a diverse mix out there. But the millet grows really well in the summer when the parasite load is the heaviest, and parasites live in the bottom 4 to 6 inches of forage. So by having them graze high when possible, one, we're trying to reduce the amount of parasite load that they're ingesting. And I like to keep the sheep moving. You know, it's about a 5-day rotation for me with sheep. If I feel like they have a heavier parasite load than I like, I actually bring them into a dry lot for about 2 weeks and feed them hay. And the ones that need to be treated are treated. And then I give them kind of time to recover. But the annuals have really helped me have taller forage when the parasite load is the highest.
And do you have specific fields that you're putting those annuals in every
I
year?
do. I do about a 25% of our pasture is put into an annual mix. And I strategically plant the ones that have deep shade in the summer with a summer annual. So, you know, my grazing millet is in the coolest pastures as far as like they get an afternoon shade.
Yeah, that's
And you know, it works really well on paper, but the execution of it is sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
So
I was just going to say, can you share just a little bit about your trials and tribulations, or some of the methods you tried, or how you found success in drilling in annuals into existing pasture? Because I think that's something a lot of people there's a lot of interest in that.
yeah, it's, you know, I have a woods no-till drill. It's only 6 foot wide, so for the size of our farm, it just didn't make sense for me to buy a really very expensive. I know a planter. I know you can rent them, but I'm one of those people that if I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning and think I want to plant at 5:30, I want to be able to go out there and jump on the tractor and do it. I actually, I won't say overgraze. I severely graze the area before I have them take it down pretty short so that the seeds that I plant, you know, are able to germinate, get a little sunlight, things like that. I still have some improvement, but you know, setting the drill properly has been a big part of it. And then what I do is if I think my seeds are going to germinate in about 10 days, I actually will put animals back on it day 6, 7, maybe 8, and then I pull them off. So anything that I got in that regrowth in the first 6 to 7 days that could prohibit the soil getting to, I mean, the sun getting to the soil I just kind of nip that off, and then I don't put them back out there until it's actually a grazing height. At least that's the goal. So I've talked to other farmers. I think everybody's struggling with it. But since I've done that, I used to go out and mow, and then you would get so much litter on the ground from mowing that I wasn't getting good seed to soil contact. So severely grazing, I use it to my advantage before I plant.
Any other questions from folks?
Darlene, I had a little bit of an inside scoop from you. I'd love for you to just tell the story of the newspaper article with the quote.
So way back when, gosh, I don't know. It's probably been about 17 years ago, about the same time I got started. My parents, very hardworking people. My mom and dad were equal farmers on the farm. They both contributed. We worked real hard, and we had an interview when I got the Century Farm certification. So it's farm's been in our family since 1909. So it would have been 2009. And the Delmarva farmer came out and wanted to do an interview with me and my dad. And, my dad was always my biggest cheerleader. So I went into the interview very optimistic that it was going to go well. And when I was talking about the fact that I wanted to sell directly to the consumer from the farm, we're in North Dorchester, which is Second Forest County. Is that correct? In Maryland, maybe. I live on a road without a line. Okay, it was a dirt road when I was a kid, and I was talking about how I thought I wanted to sell directly to the consumer and have people come to the farm. And my dad said out loud that he thought that that was a harebrained idea. He just couldn't believe that I thought people would come out here. Wow. And they put it in print, and I was like, oh boy, that really raises the bar, right? And my dad passed away 8 years ago, and I really wish he could see we're very well attended here at the farm. Like I said, summer's not my best, but I'm only open 6 hours out of a week, wow. 4 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Wednesday evening. Wow. And I just have really wonderful, loyal farm patrons. I think one of them is on here, Ashley. I won't call her out too bad, but I mean, she goes out of her way to support all the local farmers, and it's people like her. Are we convenient to buy from? No, we're not, but it's a decision. And I always say, it's the consumer that drives it all. The farmer wants, the farmer gets the glory, but really for me, it all comes back to the farm patron. Mm-hmm. If they don't come, my model doesn't work. But no, I have the article, and I never did. It's up in the attic, I think. But I couldn't believe that I just knew the gentleman wouldn't add that into the article, but he did.
Well, it sounds like you didn't hold a grudge against your
dad. Oh no. My parents were so fantastic. I wouldn't hold a grudge for anything. I mean, it was their, you read about women in farming or obstacles that women need to overcome. Well, I wasn't brought up with that mindset. We were never treated differently, and it didn't matter whether I was driving a very expensive piece of equipment or we were working with cows or pigs or whatever. I was never taught that I was limited. So I just dive into everything, and that's just the way it is. I didn't realize that there was a difference.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty amazing gift.
Oh yeah, no, they did very confidence building. I mean, that they always were. But I had a mom that was a force to be reckoned with. I mean, there wasn't anything she couldn't do. So she was my example of what a woman could do, and I just didn't know any different.
Do you rotate your hogs?
I do. So with the pigs, I moved them into the woods, starting the heat of the summer, which will be this week. And then they'll stay out there until November. I do not let the pigs stay in the woods in the winter. It's just with the freezing and thawing, it would be very detrimental to that. But I have a wooded area that's a couple acres. We're in the process of putting a really strong perimeter 4-foot woven wire fence around the entire farm, just in case one of the pigs gets out. You know, it's my duty to be a good neighbor. So I don't want to go out there and find my pigs or, you know, in my neighbor's produce field.
Yeah.
So they've taken that area that was full of briars, and, you know, I always refer to horseback riding, but I could ride a horse through anywhere through there. It's,
Wow.
you know, they've rooted up all the briars and eaten the tender roots. They don't eat the
Wow.
briars themselves, but when they root up the root structure, the briars give up, and they've really taken all of the ugly out of the woods and left the hardwoods, you know, behind.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing.
it's
Yeah.
really, and you know, and pigs don't perspire; they need the shade.
Mhm.
So, goal is to get them out there this week. If not, it'd be the beginning of next week.
And you mentioned early on, you mentioned NRCS and that you came across some NRCS folks that were inspiring to you. Have you been able to take advantage of cost share at all, or have you kind of financed everything yourself?
So probably 75% of the pasture base and the watering facilities were done on a cost share program. In the very beginning, I took advantage of that with the 10 acres. We were considered new farmers, so the cost share, they paid 80%, I paid 20, and we did all the labor. When I took advantage of the cost share program later on, we weren't considered new farmers anymore, so it was a 60-40. I didn't do the last 15 acres with an RCS because I wanted some creative license to play around. And that's been really fun because, you know, I do try to color within the lines, especially if they're coming out here and seeing what I'm doing. I want to make sure I'm doing it right. And at my age, it got me where I needed to be pretty quickly. You know, I was getting a late start. If I was 30, and would I try to piece it together myself? I don't know. But they've been wonderful as far as, you know, trying to steer me in the right direction.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I've been
And
very fortunate. One thing I do want to say, and I don't know if anybody's on here that wants to farm and do, you know, sell direct to the consumer. But I don't want them to undervalue the importance of marketing. I'd say my workload honestly is equally distributed between marketing and farming. For every hour I'm on the farm, I'm spending an hour marketing.
wow.
So
And
it's a
that's
real commitment.
mostly, is it mostly through your social media and your newsletter, or how do you kind of
Well, I
see?
do social media. I try to always have a presence on social media. It's not a real driver of sales. The email newsletter is my #1 driver. I have about 1,600 subscribers right now.
Wow.
But it's just a gentle reminder that I'm here because people get busy. Lives are very, very busy. And I don't usually do many sales posts. It's either educational or inspiring or just pleasant. And every once in a while I'll throw a sales post in there. The newsletter is my selling tool. And, you know, managing a website, keeping the information current. And with working on the farm, you just have to be very careful selling from the farm because people think you live here. Why can't they just pop in anytime you want? So I try to set fairly strict boundaries on that. I'm open by appointment. But there are sometimes, you know, one, I'm not presentable to the public, so I don't want people up here. You come at off time, and I can't tell you what you might see. It's, you know, after I've wrestled sheep, it's not pretty.
I hear you. I hear you.
So
Well, I think that's really your kind of attention to the business side of your operation in kind of parallel with the production side is really important for folks to hear, I think.
I'm fairly emotional when it comes to a lot of my decisions, but when it comes to dealing with the public, I really do try to, it's a business. And in the beginning, I would bend over backwards, to meet somebody even when it wasn't convenient. And then sometimes I just can't. So being comfortable with telling people it's not convenient time right now, most of the time they're understanding. They're just asking to ask. They're not demanding that this was the time that they wanted to come. But no, it's business for me, because the day I'm not at least making a little bit, I'll be done. Or, what it does is it drives me to be more creative. It can be done. I know it can, because I'm doing it. But if for some reason my sales were to fall off, then chances are I'm not marketing well enough, or I'm not offering what people want. So I'm not one to sit back and say, the public doesn't want to support me. I'm not giving them what they want if they're not coming.
We're almost at 12:45. I guess we are at 12:45. We really appreciate you taking the extra time, Darlene, and just all of your insights and wisdom and your willingness to share your experience. So thank
Well,
you
I
so
am
much.
happy to share. And like I said, if anybody wants to come and see how the rotational grazing, how I do it, if you can't wrap your head around it, just seeing it done and seeing how simple it is, I do think is enough to help people jump into it.
It's really a generous offer. So first Sunday, right?
Yes.